Adonai Natan va'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. God has given and God has taken away. Yet blessed be the name of God, and blessed be sacred memories. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, and that there is strength in faith. With Job we say, Adonai Natan, God, you have given. You gave to this family and to friends one who surely shall not be forgotten. For all that was good, for all that was endearing, and for all that shall be enduring, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai Lakach. And now, O God, she has been taken from life. And so, as we think of Ewa Maniawski Tuschman, taken, as it were, from life, as the journey of our life challenges us in many ways, each and every one of us, so a difficult journey for her has ended. And we gather in memoriam, unexpectedly, with heavy heart. And so we gather to share our thoughts. And as we do, we acknowledge those who are viewing this through live streaming, her family and dear friends in Poland, and others who cannot be here. And so they too are part of this kehillah, this sacred community in this moment, as we acknowledge all that was hers in life. And in our gathering here, we are here to acknowledge a journey unlike any of ours, of a girl, a young woman, who excelled in her life in Poland academically and found great joy in that. And then in coming here, over 30 years ago, to Connecticut and then here to Cleveland, and then her journey from place to place since, and ironically in the last year and a half back to Krakow. We gather to tell her story, and with those words that are spoken, including words of her husband Richard and of her son Michael, we do so to begin to understand the life that was hers, the challenges that were hers, and the love that was shared. For Eva's love that was shared in life, and which death cannot sever. For her companionship which was shared along life's path, and which continues now through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts that were of her heart and of her mind, that shared her dreams, her hopes, her values, her aspirations, and most of all, as she shared in life, both literally and figuratively, through a family, through a son, and through her family at large, figuratively and literally, that she garnered along the way in friendships. We listen to ancient words that remind us of God's nearness, including those of Ben Sira, a sage of 2,000 years ago, who wrote, "Fear not death, we are destined to die. We share it with all who ever lived and with all who ever will be. Bewail the dead, hide not your grief, do not restrain your mourning. But remember as well that continuing sorrow is worse than death itself. And so when one is at rest, let their memory rest, and be consoled with just that. For in so many ways," he wrote, "death is better than a life of pain and eternal rest than profound sickness. Seek not to understand what is too difficult for you. Search not for that which is hidden from you, and be not overoccupied with that which is beyond. For as human beings, we have been shown more than we can fully understand. As a drop of water in the sea and as a grain of sand on the shore, he concluded, are each person's few days in eternity. For the good things in life last for limited days. But a life that has been shared in love endures forever. As we will hear, and for those of you who knew her, and for you who knew her best and loved her most, her strengths were sometimes weaknesses, and her weaknesses were sometimes strength. And so, a sage helped us understand the complexities of the journey of life, not to be measured by length of days, but by what was given. Rabbi Jacob Rudin wrote, "Death will come. Its hand will never be stayed even for an instant, nor can we enter into judgment with it. For our question, why, always goes unanswered. To ask of death that it never come is futile, but it is not futility to pray. Then when our time has come, it may take us from a world, a corner of which is a little better because we were there. And so, he wrote, when we are dead and people weep for us and grieve, let it be because we touch their lives with beauty and simplicity. Let it not be said that life was good to us, but rather that we were good to life." And so she sought to be. As first coming to this country with her husband, and then the arrival of Michael, and then another journey and another life with Richard. There is a trueness to Arthur Koestler's phrase and title of his famous historical novel, Darkness at Noon. The sun which brightened our days has been eclipsed, but the eclipse is not the death of the sun, but rather only it being momentarily obscured from our signal and from our sight. We need to believe we will not always feel this way, and that this too shall pass. No matter what our challenges, demons, or struggles, ultimately life is for each of us an unfinished symphony, and so it was for her as well. And in that spirit, we call on a dear friend of Richard's, a friend of Eva, colleague and friend, Rabbi Ed Sukal, to share some thoughts.
David, thank you. It is not God's role to spare us suffering, but to help us bear it. If the visitation we dread finds us, then we do right to ask for the strength that will uphold us under the load, for the insight that reveals the wisdom of it, for the power that will transform it into blessings. And to that prayer, there is an answer. Eva has been taken from us, and we think of it as someone that we have lost instead of someone that we have had. We feel how empty our days are right now. And yet we forget how full and rich they were before. We forget all the many days and years of happiness that we lived while Eva was still with us. Instead of murmuring about our loss and that which has been taken from us that was so precious, let us be grateful that she was with us. Let us count our past happy days not as loss but as gain. And let us turn that loss to a glorious gain, the gain that comes with new courage, with nobler tasks, with a wider outlook on life and duty. Richard, to you and Michael, and to Hannah, and to all the family, we gather with you to embrace you and to comfort you in this time of sadness. And we hope that the presence of loving friends and family will be a comfort to you, and we envelop you with our love and our care. And we gather with you not only that we might embrace you, but to call upon God on your behalf, and to ask that you also feel God's loving embrace, and that this be comforting to you. These are hard days, and there are more challenging days yet to come. As you grieve and mourn, as you remember, as you look backwards and as you look forwards. In all of it, I hope that you'll remember the wonderfulness that was Ewa. The way she could look at you, filled with love. The way she could speak to you gently. All of the things she did that allowed her to enjoy with all of you such wonderful relationships. Ewa was a strong personality. You all knew that. She could be strong-headed, and she had strong feelings about many, many things. Let's call it what it was. She could be stubborn, flat out. But along with that was a tremendous sensitivity. She had a way that she could connect with people, especially one-on-one. She could connect with people because she knew how to listen. She responded sensitively and caringly. She was, by nature and by temperament, tremendously nurturing and kind and caring, sharing her love. She gave of herself. She shared her presence, her sweetness. And it's remarkable she was able to do so because she certainly had her share of challenges in life. Growing up in Poland in hard times under martial law, her childhood had challenging times, privation, and then, of course, moving from one country to the other. But through it all, she maintained that sense of caring, of kindness and compassion. Michael, you were blessed to have her as your mom. And for many of your growing up years, she was a devoted single mom to you. When I asked you how she was, you said she was a great mom. That she was. And let it be said and remembered, kind of on the strict side. Her response, your response to her stand up straight was a snapping into order quickly. Carry those wonderful memories of your mother. Let them be an inspiration for you. Richard, you enjoyed a love and a marriage with Ewa. You shared your lives. You complimented one another. When she didn't feel like she had your full attention, She gave you that look and a Richard, be with me. I can't say it like she could, but you can hear how she said it. And then you were. Eva had a remarkable religious story to tell in her life. Growing up under what could only be described as atheism, she developed deep religious sensibilities, and then years later had a Jewish awakening after going to a synagogue and discovered her religious and spiritual home. And loved it so much that she decided not only to be Jewish, but to engage in serious graduate level Jewish education in order to share that love with others. And she gave of herself in that way, in this community and in many others. Michael and Richard, to all of you, the days ahead will be challenging. But what I hope, and I know we all hope, is that you'll let the difficulty of these days and the difficulty that Eva faced in her days, let those memories recede into the background, into the recesses of your mind. And instead, in the foreground, let there be memories of Eva in the fullness of life, being with you, doing what she loved to do, with her beautiful eyes and her smile, with her words and her voice, and oh, how she loved language. Let those memories guide you. Let them be with you. The author John Gunther, who wrote Death Be Not Proud, wrote this: the influence, the impact of a person continues to exert itself long after mortal bonds have broken. Not only that she lives on in our hearts or in anything she touched truly, but that a person transmits permanently something of what she was to all of us. The fabric of the universe is continuous and eternal. Zichrona livracha. The memory of a good and a righteous woman is forever a blessing to all of us who knew her and who loved her. May she be a blessing in your lives. Amen.
Across the decades, including here for nearly a decade in the 90s, I would often speak and say, I speak as a rabbi and I pray as your friend. I speak first now as your uncle. Michael, it takes a very long time to absorb the finality of a parent's death when they die before their time. For some, it is months and years. Regardless of age, we expect the phone call to come. We expect to find the text or the email. And you will hear her voice, not just in the days and weeks and months to come, but for all the days that shall be yours. You know what I mean, which voice. For when she said to stand up, it wasn't just physically. When she called on you, Michael, hey, you knew it was serious. There will be times that you will refer to her as though she is yet alive. But life for her became too hard, and challenge after challenge overwhelmed. Is the final painful separation of death too high a price to have paid, even for the best relationship? In the spirit of the debate of ancient Israel, would it have been better not to have been born at all? The sages asked. Would it have been better instead of the terrible separation and the pain of parting, that each remains in the anonymous abyss of non-birth, never to exist, never to be born, so as never to feel the pain? But that would also mean never to have experienced the love and the incredible ties that bound you together across time and distance and place. For wherever there is love, the price can be high, very high. A sage rabbi, Rabbi Sidney Greenberg, wrote, "A bitter truth is that every love story has an unhappy ending. And the greater the love, the greater the unhappiness when it ends. Whenever we love someone, we become a hostage to fortune. Whenever we permit someone to become very dear to us, especially those who have shaped us, created us, held us, mentored us, the vulnerability is profound. If loving is expensive, being unloved and unloving can cost even more. To love and to be loved is to feel the sun from both sides. And we are much richer. You are much richer. Profoundly rich. And now pay a high cost in living. And so now I share your words. This is something I did not think I would have to write for a very, very long time. Time is fleeting, but like all of you, I thought there were many more days, months, and years ahead for all of us to share with my mother. Her soft smile, her gentle touch, her quiet yet very forceful way of nudging you when you did something wrong. The moments we spent together, the moments we look to spend in the future, these are what I will hold on to always. My mother did not have an easy life by any means. Raised in a place dominated by the former Soviet Union under communist rule and a hyper-conservative culture, she fled to the United States in search of what all immigrants yearn for, a new horizon and a new life, not only for herself but ultimately for me. Her personal struggles after her transition to American life ultimately led her to Judaism and to a community and to a religion with which she felt an innate and intimate connection. My mother didn't find Judaism. It found her. The joy that Jewish education and Jewish life brought her was tangible from the moment she stepped into her first synagogue here in Cleveland, where I would join her as a then 7 or 8-year-old sitting in the seats of Rabbi Klein's Torah study class, standing next to her as she would come up to him after he finished to continue learning from a teacher so wise. Her thirst for knowledge and growth knew no bounds as she grew from a student to a teacher in the religious school to a double master's degree recipient at Siegel College of Judaic Studies. Her involvement with faith extended far beyond the post-career hours as she chose to fully align her life with Judaism and then began her work as an office manager at Fairmont Temple, a coincidental connection that came full circle when our little 2-person family joined that of Richard and his family. It had been just the two of us for so long, often struggling, that when we melded with the Tuschmans and the Gelfans for the first time in either of our lives, we felt as if we could finally breathe just a little sigh of relief. Our new family brought stability and the love of family into our lives. As my mother's Jewish identity evolved, she then devoted her career and her personal life to developing and nurturing the Jewish lives of others, including some of you who are here today. Her passion for education was unending, and she thrived on creating programs and environments that would foster deep conversations and provoke questions, all in the interest of giving back whatever her own experiences had taught her to others. If only one of her students or congregants or community leaders would reflect or have an awakening in their own lives, she felt that then her job would be worth it. And perhaps this is how we've arrived here. Maybe she just cared too much. How much does one person have to give before there's nothing left? Her professional journey was an almost impossible one, leaving the community that shaped her own identity at an incredibly formative point in my own life, and then crossing multiple boundaries of physical and spiritual geography, encountering countless obstacles, all in the name of serving and helping others. If there is a better definition of the word devoted, I don't know one. Her final frontier led her back to the very city she taught to escape for years, for 28 years, returning a very different, mature woman than the one who had departed. Although physically separated for almost a year and a half, our conversations were still the same and just as typical. Her making sure I was taking care of myself, sending me photos of how the cats were doing, and wondering what the hell was wrong with Trump this week. She last contacted me the day before she passed. I was volunteering with my boyfriend on a charity ride in California, and she emailed me instead of messaging me because she didn't want to bother me. She hoped that we were having a great time and making new friends, and to send her some more photos from the week. I will never know if she ever saw them. If you take anything away from this, let it be the following. For all my mother gave, she took on an incredible burden. After each professional and personal challenge, a burden few would have been equipped to bear. Like I said, perhaps she just cared too much. So Michael chides us. Let's all reflect on those in our lives in a similar position, and be there ready, willing, and able to flood them with positivity, encouragement, and support, even when we think they're doing just fine on their own. Every action or word can help make their day just a tiny bit better, and perhaps that will make a larger impact in their lives than you can imagine. I loved my mother more than I can ever put into words. I'll miss her every day that I live. I will live every day as if she were here beside me. Richard and I want to thank you for being here and sharing this challenging time with us and with our family. A young person, yet growing into fully adulthood, has written and shared poignantly and eloquently. Because after all, the pain of parting and of love interrupted is a challenge no matter what her age. As a mother and as a stepmother, she sought to do her best, with strength, with pride in the kids, with Michael as she watched him blossom, always with encouragement, always with the words, wondering for herself if it was too strict. She adored you, Hannah. She was impressed and proud, as Richard has told us. As she sought to nurture, may you always feel her brushing your hair. Michael, may you always hear her voice. And Richard, as you remember in this moment, and as we share your words, may you remember how you felt when you looked and fell into her pale green eyes. Dear friends of mine who you know, in the loss of a child, having taken his life to death, said that for at least a year or more they felt they were living in a sea of jello. And that is where you reside. Knowing, as we will hear in a moment, that her life in Connecticut and Yale were an important moment in her life. Researchers at Yale recently teach us that we've been thinking about such losses incorrectly. In fact, Ruth Davis Konigsberg tells us and teaches us and challenges us to rethink what Elizabeth Kubler-Ross taught us about the stages of grief, which we have based years of responding to people in loss with. But Konigsberg writes that in dealing with a population that has recently experienced the loss of a spouse unexpectedly, that most respondents accepted the death of a loved one from the very beginning. And so you are acknowledging her pain and her passing. The emotional reaction of most participants in that study was not of anger and depression, but something much more precious and much more effective. It turns out not what we thought, but what is real. It is not the anger and depression we fear our loved ones will fall into after such a loss of their loved one, but it is a profound sense of yearning, recalling the good days that were shared and simply wanting that. And it teaches us that there is much more a grab bag of symptoms, of good days and bad days, and of 2 steps forward and sometimes 3 back, and other days when it seems as though it makes sense. One's health, repressive coping as we call it, turns out to be a healthy function. It is the reality. And the reality is that you will grieve and live with that forever. But we begin to put that forever together with words and images. And more than any words that can be spoken today, or even your words which now I will speak, more than them are the thousands of pages of precious memories and of images that you, the artist, hold in your mind, like an endless array of photographs. Some are black and white, and some are filled with color, like the pale green of her eyes, or the brightness of a day that has been shared. And so, Richard, I share your words now with all who are here and with those who listen from afar and watch. Eva and I met in 1999 when we were classmates in a biblical Hebrew class at the Cleveland College of Jewish Studies. Our teacher was Rabbi Moshe Adler, a wonderfully kind and erudite man who also happens to possess a wicked, dry sense of humor. Both Eva and I found his running jokes hysterically funny. As it happened, often we were the only students who found his jokes funny, because we were the only students who seemed to understand his jokes. So time and again, we were the only 2 students laughing, and the rest, as they say, is history. And for the record, I never did master biblical Hebrew. It would be impossible to talk about Eva without first describing her as a deeply religious and spiritual woman. Her passion for Judaism and Jewish text was central to see who she was and how she lived. Born into a Catholic Polish family, she converted to Judaism on her own volition as a single parent in her late 30s. She would describe her first experience of walking into a synagogue as suddenly feeling as if she had come home. She was a quick learner, and by the time we were married, she had earned 2 master's degrees, one in Jewish studies and one in Jewish education. These were in addition to the master's degree in linguistics she had previously earned in Poland. It would not be an overstatement to describe Eva as brilliant. She graduated as valedictorian from the elite high school she attended in Krakow, and after immigrating to the U.S. was accepted in a PhD program in linguistics at Yale. She passed up Yale in order to move to Cleveland with her young family, where her then husband had found employment. True to her humble nature, we were married for several years before past achievements such as these slowly emerged. Richard continues, Eva was wonderfully complex, and this I loved about her. When we met, her favorite books were the Talmud, and her favorite movie was Animal House. Eventually, our movie preferences happily converged on the Coen brothers. Eva adored my family. She never tired of telling me how grateful she was of the way my family accepted her and Michael into the fold as immediate full-fledged members, even before we were married. This truly meant the world to her. She had a special bond with my mother. The following is overheard at a large social gathering when Eva and I were dating. A woman pointing at Eva asked my mother, "Is that your daughter-in-law?" To which she replied, "No, but I hope she will be." Eva was unbelievably headstrong. Okay, at times she was just plain stubborn. She had strong feelings about pretty much everything. She was also extremely sensitive. Truth be told, this combination sometimes worked against her, especially in office politics and nuances in her work. That said, I think her greatest gift, both professionally and personally, was her uncanny ability to genuinely connect face-to-face with another person and to truly see the divine in the person sitting across from her, whoever that person happened to be. For Eva, this was perhaps the essence of a very strong faith. As for the other person who wouldn't want to spend as long as possible looking into Eva's gorgeous green pale eyes, I certainly never got tired of it. The fact is that Eva was the most loving, supportive, kind-hearted partner, the most that I could ever hope to have. They say how important it is not to take your loved ones for granted and not to forget to say, "I love you." On this score, I have no regrets. Eva and I told each other we loved each other and meant it every day, both verbally and in simple interactions. Yes, we both had our quirks, and there was an occasional spat. Eva tended to be a teeny bit controlling, and I tended to be a teeny bit spaced out at times. I'm sorry, Richard, I don't know how to say it when it's in all caps. That was the teeny part. But we loved each other truly and deeply, and we cherished our simple daily rituals, starting every day with breakfast together, talking about all sorts of things, trying to make the time together linger as long as possible before heading off to take on the day. And we ended every day together, watching a show on Netflix or holding hands or sipping a glass of wine or nibbling on some cookies. The almost physical ache I feel in knowing that these moments are no more, the painful loss of these everyday, taken-for-granted interactions, I think is best reflected in this simple but marvelous poem sent to me by someone I have never even met over Facebook. Death is Nothing at All by Henry Scott Holland. Death is nothing at all. It does not count. I have only slipped away into the next room. Nothing has happened. Everything remains exactly as it was. I am I, and you are you. And the old life that we lived so fondly together is untouched, unchanged. Whatever we were to each other, that we are still. Call me by the old, familiar name. Speak of me in the easy way which you always used. Put no differences in your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed at the little jokes that we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be ever the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without an effort, without the ghost of a shadow upon it. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same as it ever was. There is absolute and unbroken continuity. What is this death but a negligible accident? Why should I be out of my mind because I am out of sight? I am but waiting for you for an interval, somewhere very near, just round the corner. All is well. Nothing is hurt. Nothing is lost. One brief moment, and all will be as it was before. The poet understood. He understood your heart. And that's all that matters in this moment. And so, it is in the spirit of all of that that this now is my gift to you. For you especially, Michael, Richard, Hannah. For you, our family, and for you, our friends who knew her best, and most especially to those who loved her most. To the living, I am gone. To the sorrowful, I shall never return. To the angry, I was cheated. And to the faithful, I shall never have left. I cannot be seen, but I can be heard. So as you stand upon a shore and gaze at a beautiful sea, remember me. As you look in awe at a mighty forest and its grand majesty, remember me. And as you look upon a flower and admire its simplicity, remember me. Remember me in your heart, your thoughts, and your memories of the times we loved and the times we laughed, of the times we cried and the times we struggled. For if you always think of me, I shall never have gone. It is in that spirit now that we offer this memorial prayer. Thereafter, the internment will follow at Mount Olive Cemetery. Shiva will be observed this afternoon and evening from 3 to 8 p.m. at the home of Adrian and Phil Goldberg in Sterling Lakes. If you are to go, please, we are told, take the entrance on New Brainerd. Tomorrow, Shiva will be observed in New York from 5 to 8 p.m. at Temple Israel, the city of New York. Would you please rise?
El Malay Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina Im Kedoshim Utehorim Kizohar Harakia Mazhirim et nishmat Chava Miriam bat Avraham v'Sara shehalcha le'olama began Eden tehei menuchata ana bal harachamim hastireu beseter knafecha le'olamim Vayitzror b'tzor chaim et nishmata Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Eva, Chava Miriam bat Avraham v'Sara, for she has now entered eternity. O God of mercy, we pray, may Eva find refuge in your eternal presence, and may her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance, and we say, Amen.
As we remember her as Eva Miriam, the daughter of Arena and Marianne of blessed memory, so as she is remembered today, as a wife and as a mother, as a stepmother, as a sister-in-law, as a friend. We pray that her journey and her struggles will not have been in vain, but that you, her family most especially, will be surrounded by love of family, which meant so much to her, by friendship and by understanding, and by the tradition that became an essential part of her life. It is in that spirit now that we ask that God bless you with courage and strength to face the morrow with memories and with a circle of love around you. Amen.